I'm going to try that again.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Take two. From humble beginnings to the king of swing, a man who, during the era of racial segregation, led one of the first integrated jazz groups, his trio and quartet. His relentless pursuit of perfection gave him a reputation as a demanding taskmaster. His bands did start the careers of many jazz musicians as he led one of the most popular swing bands in the United States at that time. This week, we're talking Benny Goodman. Music time. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you guys.
Yes, good to see you all, too.
Today, I want to start by reminding people, thank you for the great comments and the great feedback that you've been providing. Thank you for following us along on this journey. And if you're new to the channel, we're using the JazzWise magazine Top 100 Albums That Shook the World. We're currently on number 44. Everybody flash a magazine. We're currently on number 44. I'm sorry, 43.
43.
Benny Goodman and his orchestra, trio, and quartet. So please, if you're new, subscribe to the channel, hit that notified button. You'll get notified every Wednesday morning when the new conversation drops. We're going to have great conversation along the way. I want to make sure to let y'all know that we are learning about jazz music, and our dialogue are things that we find interesting about these albums. It's partly our journey, personal exploration and understanding of the jazz music, but mostly just us getting to dialogue about what we think and feel about these albums. The reason I wanted to start with that is this week's album was a unique one. The number 43 in the JazzWise magazine was actually Jazz Concert number 2. It was a collection of music from 1937 and 1938. We could not find that album online. Nobody had it, and I don't know if it was even LP or CD out there, but I didn't look at Amazon to buy that.
Well, I did.
Did you find one? Were you able to find one?
Yeah, I was. I didn't buy it, but yeah, it's out there on Discogs. The LP and the CD are available. Yep.
We chose to pivot to an album very similar, and it was called Benny Goodman on Air. 1937, 1938. This particular album has 12 additional songs that were not on Jazz Concert number 2, and the album starts out with Benny Goodman just saying, hey, welcome everybody. You're going to hear a little bit different tunes. So although it is not the same album that we'll be dialoguing about, it is the exact same songs recorded over that 2-year period and collected by Phillips record label. I think that the Jazz Concert number 2 was actually Columbia Classics.
No, Jazz number 2
Phillips as well.
As Phillips, yeah.
Okay. So all that to be said,
Yep, our name indicates our level of experience here. We are the unconnoisseurs. We're not music professionals. We're not teachers. Drew is learning an instrument or 2 or 3. I'm an ex-trumpet player, but yeah, we're coming from ground level here discussing jazz. So if you want the A7 over the B minor chord, there's another channel that you can check out. We're just talking about the music and the magazine. So
yep.
I was having lunch today with a friend from a long time ago, and he said, because I was telling him about the unconnoisseur, he said, wait a minute, you don't play an instrument. Do you read music? And what do you know about music? You don't sing. So how are you on this channel? Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
I'm just here.
You know, I don't think you have to be a musician, though, to appreciate, music or in general jazz. You don't have to be a musician to appreciate it. There's lots of jazz fans who aren't musicians. So, yeah. I don't know.
I think you have to be a listener to appreciate jazz music.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Just enjoy it. Listen to it. Have a great time dialoguing about it. That makes you an unconnoisseur of jazz.
And then the other thing is find some that you love and then find more in that same kind of subgenre so that you can expand a little bit more. We're covering almost all of the subgenres here on our journey. So I mean we're anywhere from fusion to free jazz to smooth West Coast jazz and bop and hard bop. You name them, and we're probably going to cover them on our journey here. So there are some that I like way better than others.
And today we get to swing it, baby. Big time. So why don't one of y'all start with what's your dad? I'll let you start with your week. I'll go to my week, and then Matt can take the rest of the hour to talk about his week.
Please. I am so looking forward to that. But really, my week in music has just been this album over and over and over again. Now I've rabbit holed into some of the artists that were on this album, which is really cool. So I have listened to this album plus so many other pieces from this album, but yeah, that's basically been my week in music.
Nice. Anything exciting?
No, I'm sorry. There's one other thing. I do this all the time. I was at a funeral on Friday, and the woman's favorite song was "Walking in Memphis," and they played that through the beginning of the ceremony. And I thought, oh, now that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
"Walking in Memphis." Yeah.
Yep.
I'll drop that, and I'm done.
Sure. Not one more thing. Oh man, I love that. So my week, it's been a lot of music on just a couple of albums. Our personal journey is a 2.5 hour album. This one's a 2.5 hour album. So I've had some great music, and I'll talk a little bit about the correlation between those two here in a little bit. But Saturday night, Lily and I had our talent show. And so we were able to perform together on stage with the song that she had named Headlights. It's Headlights. We have been practicing that and rehearsing that and had a great time on the talent show with that. There were 10 other acts, so it was a great time. Went well, flawless. She was flawless.
Got that.
But more importantly, we had a great time and just smiled and laughed if things went a little sideways, because it's just jazz. It's what we do. This past week, I wrapped up the Faith 101 group. I'd been a Sunday school teacher with a group of young men going through Faith 101, learning a little bit more about their faith. And then, of course, Sunday night, we had a great night of jazz and learned to improv. So I had a few good solos that were breaking out, and I want to give a lot of credit to the instructions that say play long tones and practice your scales. They do work. So, Matt, with that being said, I'll start a 10-minute timer and I'll cut you off at 10 minutes.
Do we need a drum roll? We need a drum roll.
So I had a great week also listening to this album, listening to our personal artists. By the way, Drew and I are almost done with our journey here personally on our personal numbers. So it's getting towards the end. I'm excited about number 2 and about number 1 for sure. And then the ability to, once we're done, then really dive into each one of these artists that we discuss every week on the channel. So that being said, Saturday I had the opportunity to go to Elmhurst, Illinois, to the 58th annual Elmhurst Jazz Fest. And I was there last year. You all remember who I saw last year because we did a special little episode about it. And when I'm done talking and done telling you, I've got a question that I want to ask. So I made some notes. I got to see 4 college bands and of course the collegiate level. Last weekend I was at Snyder watching the high school bands, and I was kind of blown away by Northside and by Snyder Wind Machine, of course. And then you go up one level and you're watching these college students play. I got to see the Capital University from Columbus, Ohio. And they were the first band that I saw. And some of my notes were, they started off with, hang on and I'll tell you about them too. They started off, it was just a wall of sound. It was just I mean, it knocked you almost to back of your seat how they started, and the band sounded so good and so tight. They played they played a song that they played Skylark, and so when you know some of the tunes or you're familiar at least with the melodies, it tends to warm my heart up. Oh, I know that song. Oh, I know that song. I heard a lot of music that I didn't know. A lot of songs by Bob Brookmeyer that I didn't know. But yeah, when they played Skylark, baby, whew, that made me warm inside. Anyways, Billy Wolf is the director of the Capital University Band. The Ohio State University, under the direction of Mike Smith. Cooking at the Continental is a Horace Silver song, so I knew that one. You would know that one too. You'd remember the melody.
Yeah.
But the trombone solo on that song was amazing. Yeah, I'm not going to go into detail about every song, but then I saw the Purdue Jazz Ensemble. So again, remembering that Purdue does not have any musical degrees, and these are all just students. They may be astrophysicists, or they may be in the dental program, or studying to be a nurse or a doctor, and these are all just students who enjoy coming together and learning to play jazz. So they blew me away too. I don't want to pick a favorite because that's just too hard, but Purdue sounded amazing. They really did. They played Chinoiserie by Duke Ellington. Holy cow, they knocked it out of the park. So then there was a small little break, a couple hours before the Elmhurst Jazz Band got to play, and the adjudicators this year. I knew I was going to forget his name. Doggone it. Danny Gottlieb.
Okay.
Danny Gottlieb was the original drummer for the Pat Metheny group. And he was an adjudicator, which means he gets to give the college bands a little bit of critique. Okay. Now, I didn't hear any critique this year. They were all just positive. It was all positive. You guys sounded great. You keep doing this right. You do this right. You do that right. There was really no do this to get better. It was interesting though. Cheryl Cassidy, she's a sax player. She's got her own small ensemble. She played with Elmhurst Band, but she was interesting anyways. And then Ryan Keberly, he's a trombone player and a trombone player and composer. So the Elmhurst Band got to play 3 of his compositions along with him. So it's really cool. Yeah. And then Danny Gottlieb come out to play drums on a song, and they just, it's when you got a rhythm section like that tight, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It can do, and the rhythm section just stays in the pocket, and then the band is just free to just let it rip. Just let it rip. Main attraction, of course, was the WDR Big Band.
Do tell.
Okay. All right. So I told you last week was the high school bands. This week I saw the collegiate bands, and then a professional band comes on. And from the very first 60 seconds they were on stage, I felt like I had an arrow pointed right at my forehead. The sound, it just seemed so pointed, just so, what's the word I'm looking for?
Articulate? Was it articulate?
Was very articulate, but it was more directed. It was more pointed. But then I thought about it, and I'm like,
clean, crisp. Everybody played exactly when they need to. Nobody came in early. Nobody came in stayed too long. If the beat was one, they played and they were done.
Yes. But it was more like a grenade almost too, where it was pointed, but then but it just boom. It was just so big, and I was smiling on my face all night long.
Precision strike. That's exactly what that is.
It's a precision strike. Absolutely. So Dave Stryker, he's a guitar player. He's got his own band, got albums out, released, and everything else. He plays along with the WDR Saturday night. So I got to hear Dave Stryker play with the WDR big band. And of course, Bob Mintzer. Bob Mintzer's a tenor sax player, director, composer, and everything else. He's a WDR director. He's the one that, counts them off and solos and everything else. So it was just an amazing show. Just an amazing show. So here's my question, and I'm done talking. Here's my question: is it possible to have a favorite, but then there be somebody better than your favorite? Because my favorite, you know who my favorite is. I saw her last year. Last year's performance was my favorite.
Dad, I'll let you answer that. Which one of us is your favorite son? Just asking.
So, let me put it this way. There's the oldest and first. There's the youngest. And he's the handsome one. And then there's the middle son. So how about that for an answer?
Well, enough said.
So my favorite is Maria Schneider, and it has been all year long, and it probably will continue through the next 5 or 10 years. But I like the Buselli Waller Jazz Orchestra because I met Mark Buselli last week and talked to him. But there was just something about the WDR big band that they're the best at what they do. They're the Michael Jordan of big bands. They're the.
I do not disagree with that one bit. They really are.
Yeah.
I think.
Let me ask a question. Then, does it depend on being there live? Would it blow you away if you had just heard it over an album or over the web and not heard it live?
Ooh. I think yes.
Okay.
I think the answer is yes. To hear them live and to sit in that grenade wall of sound and the tightness and the crispness and the perfection of everything. Their piano player. Okay, I was thinking about this all weekend. We've heard some good piano players. We knew some good piano players. This piano player was probably the best piano player I have ever heard play. I'm not even joking. He was screaming, just smoking the keys.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. So I had fun.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did.
I almost wonder in that the genre. If you think about the different genres of jazz that we're getting into, Maria's got that orchestral or third stream, as you call it. WDR has got definitely precision, crisp, big band sound, and that's current technology. So it brings out all the heat to you. Now you take that into consideration of Buselli Waller group, and the big thing that hit us was the Jeanette Suite. Now they deliver a powerful crunch, but the arrangements are a little bit different. And I think it's crucial to think about the arrangements and all the sounds that come in. Can you have a favorite? I know that I'm his favorite middle son. So I'm at least the favorate middle son.
Middle son.
It probably always will be.
Great. Watch that.
So, man, I'm excited for you. You've seen some really great acts over the last 2 years that we've been doing this, and you've been all over the place to get some great music in your ears. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. It really was.
I was looking forward to your narration in the report.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was a butt dial, by the way.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, and then I tried to call you back, and you didn't want to talk to me.
I was already asleep.
I wasn't going to rub it in. I just wanted
a new Tex-Mex joint down the street. It made me sleepy after I ate it. So, as we talk about big band sound and swing and precision strike, let's get into this week's album. And again, I'll make sure to say it. It's Benny Goodman, his quartet, his trio, and the orchestra, Jazz Concert No. 2. From here on out, we'll just say the album. It's on air from 37 and 38. What were y'all's thoughts?
I was taken up by it. Like I said, I could not get enough of every one of the tracks on this album. Some were more pleasant than others, but I listened to every one of them almost intently, to every one of them, and I was able to identify the melodies on many of them. So, I was just so taken up by it, I couldn't put it down. Yeah.
Matt?
Well, okay. My take is I'm not a huge ragtime fan. I'm not a huge Dixieland fan. Okay. And that probably stems from the quality of the recordings. On this particular album, I even made in my notes a year ago when we did it, I said, my taste is changing a little bit. I can really enjoy this. I said, it's a little ragtime, but the swing is really starting to come through. And of course, I'm on our website at the Jazz Styles page on the Unconnoisseur, and between 1930 and 1945, it was the swing and the big band era. I mean, this is Benny Goodman. This is his era right here. Most popular period in jazz history. The large ensembles, the less improv, the more emphasis on written arrangements. So, seeing WDR and listening to Benny Goodman, I was really, really digging it. I really, really was. I mean, I was trying to picture myself in 37 sitting at one of these concerts, or probably not even sitting. It was probably, there was dancing going on and everything else. So, I'm trying to picture myself sitting there or being there, hearing it live. So, and
one of the articles I read, one of their shows, people got into the aisles and started dancing, because you just can't sit still listening to this. And during the era of time, the big band and the swing, you had dancing, you had the enjoyment of it. It was all pre-war, so there was a lot of entertainment and people being entertained. I enjoyed the album. We'll talk about rating coming up. I think I may have changed it a little bit. But I think I'm pretty happy with where I was a year ago when we first did this. I made mention that in my notes here, Benny Goodman, multiracial band, and Goodman as good as Count in Ellington. And I don't think that most people give the same credit to him or Glenn Miller as they could have or should have. In hearing this music, it made me think, man, he is just on point. The more I got into it, the more I started to understand why he was the king of swing.
I'll tell you, if you like clarinet, this is the place to go. This is the album to listen to, because the clarinet speaks loudly throughout every one of the tracks.
And I know Matt's going to talk about it in the slideshow, some of Benny's influences as it comes to clarinet. And he's classically trained. And then plays this music. I found an interesting note this morning we'll get into when we get to 6 Degrees. So do you want to do the info and then audio tracks?
Let's do a track.
Yeah.
And then go to the info.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Who's first?
Because I only get one choice. I'd like to have 3 or 4.
You may get 2 if you're not careful. Matt, I got one lined up for you. So,
okay.
Yours.
You got mine lined up. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I want to hear the song called "Benny Sent Me." Benny Sent Me, starting at 55 seconds. I'm going to be a little selfish. I want to hear a whole minute. So go to 1 minute and 55 if you would.
Yeah, boy.
I'm just a sucker for vibraphones. Milt Jackson is just laying it down. I mean, he's just. We've heard some good vibraphonists. We know Gary Burton. We've heard Gary Burton. We've listened to some great vibraphonists. Yeah. But from Milt Jackson, I love his groaning and his moaning too, because you know dang good and well that's him, because the musicians wouldn't have time to do that. So he's up there, you know, he just, it sounds like he's having a great time. It sounds effortless is what I got from that section of song. He just makes it sound effortless. And yeah, that one hit me hard.
Good.
Okay.
So let's do the slideshow so we can get into some more information, because
perfect.
If you want to.
Yep, perfect. So, just like we say every week, whatever you do it to jazz, and you can hear by our conversation, that's kind of what we do. This week, one last time, Benny Goodman and his orchestra, Jazz Concert Number 2 from 1937 to 1938. On the next slide, this is the actual album artwork. It seems like there was several versions of the album artwork, because it's not even the same one that's listed in the magazine. So the artwork that I chose, bright yellow, Benny sitting there holding his clarinet. And Dad, thank you for bringing that up too. Yes, Benny is a clarinet player. So he's not just a composer and arranger. He's playing the clarinet. Jazz Concert Number 2 makes me question Jazz Concert Number 1. Is there a Jazz Concert Number 3 as well? So I like the artwork. It's just it's different in the magazine than the one I chose, but there was several to choose from. So that's the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put up a couple of different versions right now as well, because there are two different colors. Then there's the Benny Goodman orchestra in the magazine, and I found a additional one altogether. So it was, yeah, you're right. It was weird.
Yeah, very weird. So on the next slide, I just picked two pictures this week. The one on the top, Benny playing with his band there, just, you know, part of the the era in the 30s and 40s, the band had to sound good, but they also had to look good. So you didn't have guys standing up on stage in blue jeans and a t-shirt wailing away on their instrument, even though that's what we're used to today. Back then, the band had to look as good as they sounded. So Benny's band, man, they are dressed to the nines right there. And, you know, CT talks about it in his book too. Part of a good band back then was you had to look good. Then the bottom picture that I picked, Benny sitting there playing his clarinet, again, with his big band. Now he's got his jacket off. This is probably a rehearsal session for them. That's what made me pick it, because I was like, wow, he doesn't have his jacket on. And I just wanted to highlight that fact. It's probably a rehearsal session for them, maybe before the night's or the evening's performance. All right, here we go. Let's move on to jazz lingo for the day. We're going kind of in alphabetical order here. Last week we had an I word, and this week I picked a J word, the jitterbug. A jumpy, jittery, energetic dance, or one who danced this dance during the swing period. Benny Goodman sure does have all the jitterbugs jumping tonight. Little quote, little thing that they had on the site that I pulled the term from. So the jitterbug.
Did you ever see the jitterbug?
No. Can you do it? Why don't you do it for us real quick?
Yeah. How's that go? Tell me, how's that go?
No.
You don't need to see that.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next slide where you can get it. Of course, everything's kind of X'd out here, but this week's album can be found on YouTube Music. And actually, it's not Jazz Concert Number 2, like Drew said in the beginning of the episode. But I did go on to Discogs, and it is available on LP and CD. The CD I saw on Discogs was $5.95. I didn't really check out the album, the LP, because I don't have a record player, and it didn't really interest me about the LP. But the CD was $5.95 on Discogs. Shipping probably costs a little more, and yeah, then you have to wait.
I did cross out YouTube Music on my end here.
Okay.
The YouTube Music that we have access to was the on-air album.
Yeah.
So I think that if you're going to follow along and listen to the good Benny Goodman, you can find it on YouTube Music under the name On Air.
Here's the interesting fact that I kept thinking about all week. I know that when we did it a year ago, it was on our phones because I had it I had it in my ear. I didn't really make much notes about it, but I had it in my ear from my phone, so it probably got removed from the streamers sites.
I ended up writing down all of the names. In my notebook, I wrote down every single track on both of the albums to see which ones. On Air shows 49 songs. Jazz Concert showed 37. So I know at some point in time we had it, but here nor there, Benny Goodman On Air is how you can find it on YouTube Music, or just go buy the CD or LP.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. The quote on the bottom of the slide, too many young musicians today want to win polls before they learn their instrument. So I found that interesting. They want to get up there and think that they're great before they actually learn how to play. They want to run before they walk.
Yep.
So I included a new slide this week, and actually I just found it interesting. Like on BennyGoodman.com, his website, there's a really extensive timeline. So I just kind of built my slide here with just a very short timeline. But Benny was born in 1909. He made his professional debut in 1921. And then, of course, this album in 1937, 1938 was recorded. In 1947, he disbands his big bands to work with smaller groups. It just became too much, too expensive, too time consuming to run these big bands anymore. And he just said, we'll just go with smaller groups. And then in 1986, he passed away. So just a very brief timeline. I could get in much more detail, or you guys could go to BennyGoodman.com and check out his timeline on his site as well.
It's important to remember that 47, the boys are coming back. And having 25 members in a band was no longer suitable. First of all, during the war, everybody left. And so they started finding a way to bring people back to work. And Benny was one of those who still had some opportunities, whether it was with PBS or doing some record recording stuff. But one of the things I remember reading is that in the 30s, he had hired Fletcher Henderson to do a lot of his arrangements, and hired Fletcher's band to teach his musicians how to play. And so coming into the war, he had a great group of men around him to play, and that's where it comes to. So in 47, we've talked about it in the past, 42 through 44 was the record band. No recorded music whatsoever, only V-disc. So he had found a way to maintain his stature through that as well. So one of the few that found a way to maintain bands during that wartime.
All right, let's move on to the information slide real quick. Again, Benny was born in 1909, passed away in 1986. That made him 77 years old. The influences listed right on his website, Jimmy Noon, Johnny Dodds, and Leon Rapolo. And these are all New Orleans clarinet players that were his influences that kind of led him. Well, it didn't actually lead him to the clarinet, but you get influenced by somebody by listening to their music and kind of wanting to replicate it and then move on and create your own. So yeah, Jimmy Noon and Johnny Dodds, we've talked about Johnny Dodds before, which.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, we have. Discography, he's got 40 studio CDs, and then they released 12 more after he passed away in 1986. The genre that I listed is, of course, jazz, swing, and ragtime, because he was kind of coming right out of the ragtime era, right into the swing era when he started working. So I added ragtime myself. Few facts about Benny. In 1957, he was voted all-time Downbeat Jazz Hall of Fame. So he won that award in 1957, the Downbeat Jazz Hall of Fame Award. He did achieve the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, so that was given to him as well. He was affected by the ASCAP and the strike of 42. He was. I mean, he had a big band. They were cooking, and then the strike came along. He couldn't afford to pay them, and so then back in 47 is when he disbanded. He made it 3 years after the strike. So, which is it's still a decent run.
Oh yeah.
3 years after the strike to get your band back together and be on the road for 3 years. Last fact was his last concert was 6 days before he passed away. He was still performing right up until the very end. And man, 1986, I was only 16. I wish somebody would have kicked me in the butt and said, "Hey, let's go see Benny Goodman."
Right.
But
You don't know what
yeah,
you don't know.
yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
But you
So-
have seen Count Basie's band.
That's right. Yes, I have, and so have you.
I think I'm done now. Bye. You guys.
There wasn't a lot of information on Jazz Concert Number 2. I did kind of read that it was the 5th album in his discography that he released, that was recorded in 37 and 38, but it wasn't released until 1950. So I'm sure our listeners can find some facts, maybe chime in on the comments, the facts that I missed about Jazz Concert Number 2, or maybe you have some more facts of your own that you want to discuss from Jazz Concert Number 2. But man, I it's not that I didn't look. I spent actually several hours, this weekend trying to build a slideshow, and I just didn't find much about Jazz Suite Number 2, Jazz Concert Number 2.
Just because it's compilation. Think about 30s, and I'm gonna go here in just a little bit. Think about 1928 and records. Think about the song I'm about to ask to play, and what did you record on? You had two sides, side A, side B, and so these were a compilation of singles put together in 1950. Or in this case, 1982 was when this album was put together. So they were all albums as one corresponding compilation album. That's probably why it's hard to find much information. When you're talking about Lionel Hampton, when you're talking about Bix, when you're talking about some of these other guys that were playing in the 30s, they were 78s. So they were released. And I did find in the National Archives every single one of the album, not albums, but song names. They do have in the National Archives records all of the particular press numbers. So they're all 37 songs had different pressings. So then the on air were the songs being played, and actually in Europe as well. All of these songs were being played on air. So all of them had been recorded. All of them had masters, but this was a compilation of those songs. Anyways.
Nice. Anyways, all right. No, we're jazz geeks.
Jazz geeks.
Jazz, almost connoisseurs. 6 degrees. So I got Benny Goodman. Of course, we just heard a piece Benny sent me with Lionel Hampton in it. Hampton played with Gillespie, of course, and then Gillespie played with Miles. So I got 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation. And you're gonna knock my socks off with.
Of course I am. Because I'm getting to be a jazz nerd. I'm just going to go ahead and say the name Zoot Sims.
Yeah.
In 1962, Zoot Sims and Benny Goodman played in, it was called Benny Goodman in Moscow. Zoot Sims played with Miles Davis. Now, Hank Jones also played with Miles Davis. The Art of Performing with Hank Mobley played with Miles Davis.
Yeah.
And about 30 minutes ago, y'all got an email from me because I scheduled it to send, where he's on stage with Zoot Sims and Clark Terry. So Benny Goodman, Clark Terry, Miles Davis. So all of those quick connections. So CT was, I'd watched that video several times, and it wasn't until just an hour ago I was like, that's Clark Terry. And Clark had a long-standing relationship with Dewey.
Yeah, with Dewey, yes, you're right.
Dewey Davis.
And with Benny, then he played with Benny.
Yes.
Cool. Let's move on to the last slide, and then we can hear a couple more clips. Today in jazz history. Today is March the 5th, and the tenor saxophonist Frank Foster and Frank Wess record Two Franks, Please, in 1956. I found it interesting. That. 2 Franks, Please. And then also in 1929, Louis Armstrong records Knockin' a Jug. So that was a recording from 29. One final quote by Benny Goodman, and then we'll wrap the slideshow up. Sometimes when you start losing detail, whether it's in music or in life, Something as small as failing to be polite, you start to lose substance.
Mhm.
Something as small as failing to be polite. That's the quote that got me.
Mhm.
He could have said making your bed. He could have said, buckling your belt. Something as small as that. But he chose something as small as being polite. I find it much easier to criticize somebody than I do to pay them a compliment sometimes.
Mhm. Or to think critically of them and not say something kind or affirmative.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and he was in the pursuit and the relentless pursuit of perfection. And so if he was always driving for that kind of perfection and that kind of personality, it's a large reflection on who he really was. Man, he spoke highly about desegregating the music, and he stood behind his guys to the point of saying, well, then we just won't play here. We'll leave. He did all kinds of things, and his history, just reading his earlier years where he came from, Dad enrolled him in music, and I wrote that down because I thought it was important, believing that music might be their ticket out of poverty for his sons. Benny's dad got the 3 boys enrolled in music classes. And we've talked about it. What will music do? What can music do for people if not get them out of that? And then he got good at the clarinet and found inspiration with some of those.
So his older brother, he gave a tuba, and then his middle brother, he gave a trumpet, and then Benny, being the smallest of the 3, got the clarinet.
Yep.
Is that why Phil got a violin?
And I got the tuba of all things.
Tuba.
So was there a reason behind that?
Makes you wonder.
Man.
Wonder for sure.
So
All right. I'm ready to hear another clip.
I am too.
Let's do.
You wanted Dad? Let's go to yours because
Vibraphone blues. And it might sound a little bit like your choice, Matt.
All right.
It'll sound similar, but yeah, just wait. This is a good one.
Lionel Hampton, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Here we go.
If the blues was whiskey, I would stay drunk all the time. If the blues was whiskey, I would stay drunk all the time. And if I get drunk, I would leave you behind. Now swing it, Mr. Goodman. Swing a long, long time. Swing it, Mr. Wilson. Played a long, long time. When Mr. Cooper beat those riffs, he don't let you down, is it?
I just feel like keeping it going. Sorry. I didn't want it to end.
I know. That's where I was. It's just such a good piece. And obviously, this is Benny at his, you could almost say at his best with that clarinet. Oh, buddy, he can play that thing. He can really bring it out. And it's so smooth and articulate and on the point. It's just so good. And of course, the lyrics, they're pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. blues. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's blues for sure.
That is
Bluesy.
definitely blues.
Yeah.
He sounds in that particular section there. It sounds effortless for him just to do those runs on. And he's good enough. I mean, of course, he's the king of swing, but that just sounded effortless for him to move in and out of those passages that he was playing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read somewhere that this was a recording, a live performance recording, and the orchestra didn't know they were being recorded, so they were more relaxed.
Yes.
And they were flow, and they could play with ease. Otherwise, Benny was a perfectionist, and he drove a lot of people crazy. Because he wanted
a lot of people crazy.
On. In fact, my man Gene Krupa was with him for only a short time because Gene wanted some latitude to play some solo pieces, and Benny said, "Nah, you ain't going to do it." So Gene Krupa left the orchestra because he wanted some more limelight. Benny said, "Nah, no thanks."
And I forget who it was. A female vocalist said that the 2 years was like living in hell, being with him. The demands and the pressure, and he was relentless. I'm going to go to my clip because I want to talk about this. I know that we had shared clips, but I'm just going to start it at the beginning. And my clip that I want to hear is Stardust. This is a Hoagy Carmichael song that was penned in 1928 in his time at Indiana University. Now, when we talk about arrangements and how you create sound in the sound wave, I'm not going to make y'all listen to the Stardust from Hoagy Carmichael or Bix, but I'm going to let you listen to this arrangement, and I'll get 1 minute of it in. And to me, I had to hear Stardust because of its legacy. We've done Bix Beiderbecke. And the history of Benny Goodman, born in 2009 in Chicago, at 13 got his first union card, and he performed on the Lake Michigan excursion boats. And in 1923, he played on the Guyanson's Paradise, a local dance hall. In that same summer, he met and played with Bix Beiderbecke in a big band. And to me, can you imagine playing that song in 1937, knowing that you have performed with Bix himself? And to do that song in an arrangement where I almost can't hear it. You almost don't know that that's Stardust. And if you're listening, you go, oh, wait a minute, I hear that clarinet, and man, could that be Bix himself? And then the great cornetist Bix.
So I actually had that pick as well, and so I had made some notes. But what I in my notes, if I was getting to talk about the clip, I put he reimagined a classic. Okay. Now, Hoagy wrote it in 1927, and then Bix did it in 1928. But so the song was already 11 or 12 years old when Benny's band did it on this album. So to me, that would be like redoing Adele's Rolling in the Deep because it came out 12 years ago. Put a swing on Rolling in the Deep, or change Moves Like Jagger by Maroon 5 to be a ballad and blues. Okay, that's what they're doing, and we laugh because those songs are kind of still relevant or seem relevant to us today because we still hear them on the radio. All About That Bass by what's her name, Megan Trainor. That song came out 12 years ago. All About That Bass. Now put it in a swing where you're swinging the song instead of rapping the song. That's what Benny's doing on this version. So it just blew me away when you stop and think about it, because you're right. He met Bix. Bix was good friends with Hoagie anyways, and so you're hearing the music straight from the horse's mouth that wrote it, and what a legacy is to be able to change it and make it your own and swing that bad boy, because you're talking about taking a love song. It was basically a love song that he wrote.
The heartbroken love song.
Yeah. And transforming it into a danceable swing song.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, I'll shut up now.
Well, and to perform a classic like that, you better have the huevos rancheros to do it. And that goes back to Benny's big bands setting the gold standard for the time. He did it. He could do it, and he could have continued to do it for a very long time. So I think he is a name that everybody should know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you the question. Why didn't he get the recognition like Glenn Miller or Basie or Duke? It's not one of the first names that's going to roll off your tongue when you're talking about big bands.
That was the funny part to me about finding Zoot Sims. Benny did a bebop album with Zoot, and it cracks me up.
Much later, though. He did that in 52. That was much later.
He wanted to play like Parker did, and that was kind of it. So that was that early 40s, as we know from Savoy. Mid 40s. The deal is, I don't think he changed with the times, and Ellington didn't, and Basie didn't, and Miller didn't. But he was. The second thing is, I don't think he changed with the times and wasn't willing to bend with it. I think the second is, when the bebop era happened in the late 40s, the clarinet was not an instrument of choice. They moved to Parker playing on an alto sax. They moved to Dizzy and the trumpets. And I think that the statement that he made in the 60s, maybe Bop has done more to set back music for years than anything. Basically, it's all wrong. It's not even knowing the scales. Bop was mostly publicity and people figuring angles. And so I wonder if that attitude wasn't part of why he didn't continue. And maybe we're unconnoisseurs and he's got a name out there, but it's not a name that we hear all the time. I mean, for crying out loud, he is number 43 in the countdown. So
That's true.
So he is somebody.
And he is called the King of Swing.
Yes.
The King of Swing.
King of Swing.
Yeah.
For good reason.
So now we know.
There were a lot of others, big bands at that time, including Duke. Don Redman, another big name. Artie Shaw.
Oh, Artie Shaw, yeah.
Yeah, big band. A guy by the name of Ben Pollock, big band performer. Several others, of course.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. That's great info. We need to add those names to the list on this episode. Just make some notes.
Yeah.
And add that to the about or more feature of the episode, because man, I'd really like to check some of those out.
Well, yeah, I checked out Sugarfoot Stomp by Don Redman, and he's got Cole Hawkins with him on
Coleman
that.
Hawkins on that.
Yeah. Coleman, Coleman, yeah.
You guys would like that. You'd like that. A couple other Moonglow by Artie Shaw. That's a cool listen.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right, let me ask you this. Did it shake your world? Did this album shake your world?
I wouldn't say it shook my world, but I would say it really struck me as a very good piece of music. jazz music. But Shaking My World, there's other artists and other pieces that are more earth shaking. But if you're talking about swing, and that's what we're talking about, swing, it can definitely shake your world.
Matt,
So
shake you?
Tremors.
Okay.
It gave me some Tremors. Yeah, it definitely gave me some, and maybe not so much last year, but this year again. I'm listening to Benny. I'm watching the WDR Big Band. I'm studying Benny. I'm really diving in, and so that's where my shaking is coming from this week. I think last year I didn't give him the respect that he deserves. Maybe, it's, again, we've talked about the recording technology improving so much, and those scratchy records for me are hard to concentrate on. They're hard to pull out layers of music. It all kind of just sounds flat to me, whereas in today's recording, man, it's like an onion peeling back layers of what you can extract in your ears. So yeah, I had tremors. I got tremors from it.
It shook me a year ago just because it was something new and fresh that we hadn't heard. The clarinetist, who is Benny Goodman, it was fun digging in and seeing all of the names of performers with him, listening to the trumpet players. This year, listening through it again, it really did shake me because it reminds me of the time as we're coming out of the ragtime, out of that Dixieland feel of New Orleans and into this big band swing where you've got this large ensemble of a wall of music and the precision strikes almost of what they played. What I didn't know at the time and what I've learned now is although he wanted to play like Charlie Parker and some of the other bebop players and realized it's a different world, I almost wonder, listening to Benny play his solos on these songs, if Parker didn't just use Benny's sound. And we know many musicians who played their altos or even tenors as if it was a clarinet, super fast runs. How many people did find inspiration in the clarinet style of Benny Goodman? And that's something that shook me then because of where we're currently at and who we're currently listening to. And I challenge you tomorrow morning or tonight, listen to a couple of those tunes and tell me you don't hear Benny Goodman in there.
Yeah, for sure.
It did. Rating.
Before we go, upon reflection about Shaking My World, perhaps the reason it didn't shatter me or give me tremors is because I was born in 46. Okay.
This was the music of your time.
I've heard I've heard it over and over before. Okay. So I recognize Benny, and I think I would recognize him moving forward. So yes, that puts a little bit different spin on perhaps the reason that I
get it. No, I get it. I do. That's okay.
Yeah. So what's your rating?
The week that we went through this, Matt, do you want to give yours?
I'll go first. Yeah. Again, I felt tremors. It wasn't earth shaking for me. I rated Benny Goodman and his orchestra at a 7.5. It's not a great score for someone who's as talented and widely known as he is, but it's just that's what last year that's how I felt.
Last year, before we knew what we knew. And now we're starting to understand that we don't know what we don't know still. I gave it a 7.5 as well. That week, I think we both hit the same reason, the same stride. Dad?
Well, I started off thinking 8.5, and then I said, no, this is a 9. For me, this is a 9. And because the variety of music that's here, the vocalizations, the lyrics, the instrumentation, and Benny playing impeccably with this clarinet. So yeah, it's big time 9.
It hits all the criteria.
Yep.
The craftsmanship, the awareness, the creativity is definitely there.
Yeah.
the spirit, and then how does it make you feel? The emotion part of it. So
I wanted to dance. I mean, all
Yeah.
week long listening to this album, I just wanted to get up and dance. I can't dance, but I sure would have.
You dance like a four-legged mule? Is that what it is?
I do.
So every time that I hear Benny, all I can think of is Sweet William Brown by Van Halen, and if I know, but Eddie's dad comes on to Sweet William Brown and plays a clarinet solo, and it is gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a cool song, anyways. I should have had you play the clip from Sweet Willie Brown,
From Van Halen.
from Van Halen, yeah. But anyways, that's what I hear in my head.
It's funny because on the way home tonight, I asked Lily to read off top 10 Benny Goodman songs, and one of them was Sweet Georgia Brown.
Sweet Georgia Brown, yeah.
Yeah, Sweet Georgia Brown. Do you all realize what that was, Dad?
Uh huh. Yeah, it's a Harlem Globetrotters theme.
Harlem Globetrotters theme.
So, I'm surprised, first of all, that neither one of you chose Caravan, and I almost chose that because the Caravan's been around a long time.
Long time.
In fact,
Covered by many artists.
if I may,
Yeah.
there's 500 versions of it's the most covered song in history. 500 versions of Caravan. It was first done by a guy by the name of Barney Biggard. Barney Biggard did it first.
So where would you want to start at?
Well, at the beginning, actually.
All right, then. Let's do it.
So, can you see the performers getting into that song and they're swinging themselves? I'm sure they were swinging, and they were motivated to play that. It's such a sweet piece. Anyway,
I'm picturing the other way. I'm picturing being on stage, watching the crowd just get on it and just lay it down on the dance floor during that song, because it's hard for me to sit still, sitting right here in front of a camera, listen to that song. So
wouldn't it be fun to watch the reactions on people's faces when you played that in a wall of sound like that? That was precision strike, like you had described WDR this past weekend. Just clean, crisp, sharp, super talented people blowing those horns. Just phenomenal. So
I think Caravan and In the Mood are on the same level of favoritism for me. I love In the Mood. Anytime I hear In the Mood, I don't care if it's a terrible version by a high school band or a middle school band. I love the song. Caravan is right up there as some of my all-time favorite jazz classics.
Yeah. Again, 500 versions.
Uh-huh.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
It is.
So
It
thanks for giving me two choices.
Yeah. Next week I get two choices.
It's only got 3 songs on the album.
Can I introduce next week's artist?
I need you to desperately, because I am so excited to get this album and many more in my ears.
Oh my goodness. I love it when, and I've said it 100 times, I'll say it more, but I love it when we turn the page and we look at an artist and we think, who the heck is this cat and why is he in the magazine? Yep. Next artist, number 42 on the countdown. And again, we're using the Jazzwise magazine's top 100 albums that shook the world, counting down. Number 42, Jimmy Smith. The name of the album is The Sermon, and it was released on the Blue Note label on LP and CD. It was recorded in 1957 and 1958. And you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't judge an album by its cover, because let me tell you, Dad, if you never heard Jimmy Smith, oh my goodness. It's going to be a great week listening to music. The Sermon by Jimmy Smith. And seriously, you're going to start rabbit holing on Jimmy, and you're going to pull up some amazing, amazing music. Drew and I have been back and talked kind of relentlessly about the sermon. Even in our weekly conversations, it still comes up as some earth-shaking music. So
I can't remember. Did Jimmy fill the void for Larry, or Larry filled it when Jimmy?
I think Jimmy filled the void for Larry when Larry left.
Blue
Jimmy came in. Yeah, Jimmy came in.
We listened to Larry Young. The album was Unity.
Unity.
Phenomenal organ. Now, I will say this. The first song is 20 minutes long. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not a fan of 20-minute songs, but, brother, I could tell you, let it go for an hour. I'm digging it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I cannot wait for the discussion next week. I really want to hear what you think of Jimmy Smith, Dad. Yeah, I'm so excited. I wish we could record that episode right now.
I know, right? I've already listened to the album 100 times in the last month. So I do want to say, one of the things that struck us the most, Lee Morgan's on trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Donaldson, George Coleman on alto sax, Tim Brooks on tenor, and Kenny Burrell, Eddie McFadden on guitar, Art Blakey, and Donald Bailey on drums. It was recorded in two separate recordings, once in August 57 and then February of 58. And we know what happened in those late 50s.
So, like Drew referenced, Larry Young, his album Unity was the first organ jazz that I think I had ever heard. Okay. And Unity on our list, it kind of shook us. Larry Young. I gave Larry an 8.5, 8.5.
Yep.
Yeah. So I can't wait for the discussion next week. Dad, I hope you enjoy Jimmy Smith the same way we do.
Sure. You know I'll check it out.
For all of y'all listening, you will be moved. You will be moved.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on our conversation this evening. We really appreciate you hanging around. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to hit the alarm so that you get notified when the new episodes drop. Drew, why don't you tell them where they can find us?
As always, go to the website, theunconnoisseur.com. You can find us on TikTok and here on YouTube, as well as our 3 favorite podcast channels out there. Don't forget to drop us emails at theunconnoisseur@gmail.com or just hit comments right below. Smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell. You guys are goobers. Until next week.
Next week, baby. See you later.